I'm calling Mr. Musondambita to make his presentation. He's a PhD student. Yeah, his topic is on parole in Zambia. So, Mr. Mbita, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready, Professor.
Okay. Help us, teach us today what you have done or what you are doing. You have 15 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, please.
Sorry, there was somebody making noise outside. You have 15 minutes, and we will allow another 15 minutes. So another 15 minutes for questions, clarifications, and any observations that participants will observe. So try to squeeze whatever you want to present to us within the 15 minutes we give you.
Yes, now manage.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Today we're going to look at parole board decision making from a Zambian perspective of offenders. This is done by Msondambita, PhD in criminal justice. Background of the study. Prison overcrowding in correctional facilities is one of the largest and most challenging problems facing Zambia today, and due to that, the correctional service cannot create an effective and conducive environment for rehabilitation or enhance the successful reintegration of offenders into the community. Today, as we look at parole, being a method of conditional release, in as much that we are looking at parole board itself, the parole board is a panel of people who decide whether an offender should be released from prison on parole after serving at least a minimum portion of their sentence as prescribed by the sentencing judge, and of which today on correctional service record, the people that are usually recommended for parole are people, inmates with a sentence of 2 years and above, and should have remained with 6 months before they are due of discharge. The Department of Correctional Service is responsible for facilitating the correction of offending behavior in a secure, safe, and human environment in order to achieve rehabilitation and the avoidance of recidivism. Purpose of the study. And as much as we are looking at parole board decision making from a Zambian perspective of offenders, the main purpose for the study is to reduce overcrowding in correctional facilities which are overcrowded through Zambia's parole process or policy, and to investigate and advance the work on parole decision making by considering the correctional supervision and parole board's perspective, specifically the viewpoint of community members. Statement of the problem. To conceptualize a research problem means to identify a general topic, which is parole board study, and to specify particular dimension of the topic decision-making process for more intensive examination, and then to pose several pointed questions that will guide the researcher's inquiry. In as much that the correction service gets to hold in the inmates or admits in inmates, in the process that they get to apply for parole board, the first slide there where it is written parole is granted. This is where after inmates have been looked at to say, no, this person has changed, the first part that takes place is parole gets to be granted to an inmate. And for the purpose of parole being granted to an inmate, that inmate should be integrated with the society. And on the third slide, he has to become a normal member of the, he has to become a normal member of the society out there. The problem arises at the second phase, which then conceals step 3. Inmate does not become a normal member of society when the integration with society fails. And a problem arises, namely that paroled inmates either return to crime. This need to be prevented, and this is the focus of the study, namely on how to prevent unsuccessful integration of parolees. Research objectives. The main objectives of the study, the overall objective of the study is to find out why those parolees eventually ends back in prison and how can this be prevented in Zambia so as to fully inform the correctional facilities in preparing inmates adequately for successful reintegration into society upon release. And the following are specific objectives. Number 1, to find out the main factors that determines the correctional supervision and parole board's decision for parole. 2, to ascertain the barriers that can hamper parole success. 3, what would be the correctional supervision and parole board's best decide whom to release and when to release an offender on parole. Number 4, to find out the extent that offenders are equipped with the necessary tools to deal with their reintegration into the community. Number 5, to assess the correctional supervision and the parole boards on how they determine the risk to the community, to the victim, and the risk of reoffending when placing an offender on parole. The last one, to invest in the social reintegration of offenders. We can go now to the research questions. The research questions are just coming out from the objectives that just from reading, where the objectives are just being turned into questions. And because of time, we can go to significance of the study. Significance of the study, 1 is to provide the relevant information that would be useful to the Zambia Correction Service and society in general. The study would furthermore help the Zambian Correction Service in reorienting its prisoner rehabilitation programs and approaches with the aim of enhancing successful reintegration of ex-convicts into society. And the study will also contribute to the identification of the critical gaps, weaknesses, and challenges in the current rehabilitation programs among correctional facilities. Limitation of the study. The study covered only the National Parole Board headquarters, which is in Lusaka Central Correctional Facilities, Lusaka Central Correctional Facility, Lusaka Female Correctional Facility, and Lusaka Remand Correctional Facility in the country of Zambia. And the findings would apply to the other correctional facilities where similar or same problems exist. The study deals only with reoffending of inmates, hence other factors that may have the same impact to the prisons were not looked at. Delimitation. To counter the noted delimitations, the researcher ensured appropriate time was allocated to every activity and strictly adherence to the budget was observed. Literature review. On the literature review, we did look at the case study of Mwizabi 2018, where we looked at some social factors contributing to recidivism among discharged prisoners. And I also went further to look at the case study of Tobias Mwanza, 2012, who did look at a study on parole as a way to reduce overcrowding in Zambia. Then the last person that I also tried to look at was Francois, 2008, where the person that looked at the case on the parole process from a South African perspective. Methodology and research design. On methodology, this was a mixture research of quantitative and qualitative. The study utilized the descriptive survey design, and the researcher considered this type of research design because it helped the researcher maximize the collection of useful data. And the target population consisted of 116 respondents, where 98 were from the convicted inmates were targeted. The rest 18 were selected from members of the correctional service staff, and the National Parole Board staff were purposefully sampled for interviews. The outline sampling procedures were used together with an in-depth interview in order to make the research as exhaustive as possible. And in order to randomly come up with the sample size, the HART software was used. Research instrument. We can go to the next slide. We can go to research instruments. We can check on the slides for research instruments. Oh, yes, please. Research instruments. We look on research instruments, we use the semi-structured interview guide, observation checklist, document analysis, focus group discussion, and also looked at the case study review, data analysis and discussion. We can get to the next slide. On data analysis and discussion, we also discussed, we did look at the factors that determines the correctional supervision and parole board's decision for parole. And on this one, this is where previous convictions are the most important factors that might influence decision for parole placement. Then on the next one, to ascertain the barriers that can hamper parole success. This is where the purpose of parole is to adjust the offender to the community in which he will remain after being released from prison. Then the third one on correctional supervisions and parole boards decides whom to release and when to release an offender. This one is a crucial one because on this one, this is where the acknowledge of offenders' compliance with the sentence plan in order to promote the rehabilitation of offenders and minimize the offenders' risk of reoffending and gradually reintegrate into the community. The last one, the extent offenders get equipped with the necessary tools for their reintegration. As for today, it's just by empowering them with several skills, as well as offering them with literacy programs, warriors in correctional facilities. And unfortunately, no tools are there to equip offenders because they end up reoffending, and they end up reoffending or breaching the parole rules. And the researcher had to adapt to the question referring to reintegration. Next slide, summary to the study. Can go to the last slide on the summary to the study. The parole board system of Zambia reflects the principles of social integration, and communities must start to assume large roles in ensuring that corrections do take place, that offenders are rehabilitated, and as a result, successfully reintegration into their communities. We can get to recommendations. On recommendations, the Zambia Correction Service should increase the frequency of parole hearings, more hearings. This is where more offenders will be considered for placement within the community. And all sentenced offenders who are placed on parole should be compelled to do community services as a constructive contribution to save the community. The Zambia Correctional Service urgently needs to appoint more. Yes, Prof.
Yes. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to tell us the other things which you didn't tell us, because what you tell us in the summary, I haven't heard it anywhere. So quickly tell us what you have, which is in the summary, which we want to know.
Which is in the summary, which needs to be known.
Well, you have mentioned the summary. I'll come back to it quickly before time runs out.
Okay, let me just get to the conclusion then. I'm almost there. Okay, on the conclusion part, the purpose of parole is to adjust the offender to the community in which he will remain after being released from prison. And according to Mtingi, successful offender reintegration as a crime reduction strategy, it should be overall purpose of the criminal justice system. Success of parole depends on the habilitation of parolee to adapt for society to accept, and the degree of civilization in society can be judged by entering its prison. Thank you for your attention.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mbita, for presenting to us your findings. And well, I didn't see your findings, but whatever you have done. And well, for now, let's see what other members here have seen. And any comments from colleagues, students, members of staff will give you the opportunity to comment at the end. How can we help the student students? You don't see anything, you haven't had anything which you whets your appetite to ask something? You know, I'm the chair, so I can't be the one asking too many questions. Okay, if students do not have, or you can come in later on, I have a few observations. Mr. Mbita, take us to your slide on the statement of the problem. That is the statement of the problem. What is really the problem that you are investigating? Mr. Mbita, you can hear?
No, I'm getting you, Professor.
Yeah.
The main problem which is there is trying to prevent inmates from getting back to prison after being released on a parole board. Because you find that inmates, yes, that's a main problem, Prof. Inmates getting back to prisons after being in prison for some time, there are those processes of reintegration that usually take place within the system upon him or her being checked after to say, no, this person has changed, he's done some skills and the like, is likely to be in the community without any problem. But the moment we get to release those inmates, they end up getting back to prison. So those are some of the things that I'm trying to tackle.
Okay, that's what you are saying, but that's not what I'm reading here. You see, I'm talking from the point of view of anyone who is reading. You are thinking in a different way. You are writing in a different way. You are getting my point. And I hope all students who are reading here or who are here see this problem. You see, you must tell us what we are reading there, not what you are thinking. Okay,
Gashas can take us to the third slide on that one.
Where's the third slide? Is that the third slide?
No, from the statement of the problem, we can go to the next one. The other one now. Yes. The other one.
Yeah, what is the problem? Okay.
We can get to the other slide.
Okay, let's move on. You say I'm just trying to. Okay. The problem all is students. Okay, don't let me speak. All students, when you tell us the problem, just the first, please tell us what is the problem you are investigating. Okay, conceptualization. So there are other sections where you present the conceptual framework of your study and so on. You see, when you are telling us this is the problem, just one slide, tell us what is the problem you are going to investigate. And please tell us what you have written and not what you are thinking. Okay, we evaluate what we read, and your friends are making judgments on what you are saying and what they are seeing there. You are saying something totally different and you are presenting to us something very different. It's a guide to all students, okay? And for a statement of the problem, tell us, you must tell us what is the ideal situation? What is pending now? What is the difference, which is a problem? What could be the problem if that problem or the difference is not sorted out? That is what the problem statement tells us. And that's how we should write the statement of the problem. Not running about everywhere, telling us the literature review and so on. It has its own section. Are we together? Yeah. I think the other thing I wanted to look at is your objectives. Show us the slide on objectives. Mr. Mbita.
Hello. Gracious, you can take us to objectives.
You know, that's the reason why the students or the one who is presenting must have control over whatever he's presenting. You know, you must have control. Gracious.
No, it's Gracious, the professor who's doing that for me.
Yes, Prof. Show us
slides here.
the slide on the objectives.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, I looked at these objectives, and you know, some of the objectives are written in an unconventional way. You know, I've spent many years in research, and some of these things I've never seen. I'm not a student of law, but let's look at objective number 3. What you call an objective number 3. Mr. Mbita, read that.
What would be the correctional supervision and parole boards based decide whom to release and when to release an offender on parole?
That is an objective. Hello, Mr. Mbita, tell us how that is an objective. You are a PhD candidate. Oh, help me. And there are your colleagues here, help them. Okay. You know, these are the small things and ways for a PhD, you know, to present work like this. I know we have students who are masters here, and others are undergraduates, and I think I've seen your work. You have written almost to the end, and you go right to the beginning. You have this. Okay, how did you proceed from here to go and do your research methods? Because the research methods are determined by your objectives. Okay, what else? What were your findings? Just show us if there's a slide you missed out. Because I wanted to see quickly your results on the summary. Are there research results presented? Mr. Mbita?
Yes, Prof.
Show me just one slide with the research results so that my heart rests on the summary.
What is this?
Gracious, take us to the research results presentation slide. Okay, they are not there.
No, those are not yet there.
Okay, now if they are not there, what are the results you are telling us? Because you say if it's a summary of this, you should have just summarized what you have presented to us, rather than what you have written here. So by and large, I think it's not just a lesson to you, but all those who are with us here. So if you have to write to tell us a summary, if you have no results, do not talk about your results if you have not presented them. Just tell us the summary of just what you have presented to us. Because we become inquisitive, because a person like me becomes inquisitive. How did he arrive at this? Okay, and I've seen even your conclusions. Your conclusions have to do with the literature review and so on. True. Do not write a conclusion on the literature review. A conclusion is based on the results that you have found. Are we together? Yeah. So it's a lesson not just to Mr. Mbita, but a lesson to everybody. When you come to the point of telling us your conclusion, let it be the conclusion of your findings. Okay. Any more questions from members of staff? Dr. Ndalama? Dr. Kachamba? I don't know, other members of staff? Questions, observations? Okay, if not, let's move to the next presenter. Thank you, Mr. Mbita. I hope the comments will help you and your friends have learned something. Yeah. You know, when you want help, come for help. Don't just jump at other things, sections before you are sure of what you have written in a particular chapter. Get help, ask for help. We are there, that's our responsibility. Thank you, Mr. Mbita. I think our next presenter is, who is our next presenter? Our next presenter, Gracious.
Yes, Prof.
Who's our next presenter?
Mr. Onyeka Nathan.
Okay, Nathan Onyeka. Is he around today?
Yes, I'm here, sir. Good morning.
Okay, it's your turn. Sorry, I moved out the program. Okay.
Okay, so I was scheduled for 9:30 a.m. this morning. I won't believe I can share my screen. Okay, so I don't know if you can see my screen. Prof, can you see my screen? I'm sharing my screen right now.
Yes, we can see your screen. Thank you.
Okay, so if you give me the go ahead, I will just start presenting.
Yes, start. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Onyeka Nathan. I am a PhD candidate, and my research topic is an assessment of the efficacy of sustainability accounting on stakeholders' value, a case of public companies in the manufacturing sector in Nigeria. So basically what we're trying to do is to assess sustainability accounting and how much of an impact it makes on creation of value for stakeholders. We had to delimit the study to manufacturing companies in Nigeria. I'm going to talk about that much later when I get to the limitations of the study. Okay, so I currently I have just had my chapter 1 approved, so I'm working on chapter 2. That's where I am, but I felt that it's better to get guidance along the way instead of having to continue pushing. And then, so I've received a lot of guidance from my supervisor, Dr. Kachamba, and yeah, but I just thought, okay, it's also good to present to the house generally, hear what others have to say. So the first chapter is chapter 1, which is the introduction. And basically, what we are trying to research is on sustainability. Now, sustainability has been on the front burner, and the United Nations has been driving it through the sustainable development goals. And basically, what this whole concept of sustainability talks about is that you can do well by doing good. In other words, when companies or organizations are carrying out their businesses today, they should carry it in such a way that while they are meeting their needs today, they do not jeopardize the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So what that implies is that when you're running your business today, so for example, you have to generate electricity. Now you're generating your electricity maybe from generators that burn fuel and diesel and all of that. And the United Nations is saying, if you are going to do that, remember that generations are going to come after you. So what that means is, now that you're trying to carry out your business activities, you're releasing a lot of greenhouse gases, you're doing a lot of stuff that harms the environment. So are you sure by the next 10 years, the way you're carrying your activities, the other generations that are coming can be able to carry out the activities without jeopardy? So that's the whole concept of sustainability. Now, there are various aspects of sustainability. Like they say, whatever gets measured gets done. So the part of sustainability which concerns everybody, it's the reporting side of it, because there is no way somebody's going to measure how sustainable a company is until they can see a report or until they can see documents and KPIs on the basis of which this company has been assessed over a period of time to see whether their operations are sustainable or not. And that is where sustainability accounting comes in. Sustainability accounting has to do with the framework which the UN has released, and through a couple of other organizations, by which organizations should, or rather be encouraged to report their operations, so that anybody that is assessing these organizations can know how these organizations are faring and whether they have a footprint on the environment which will prevent other generations that are upcoming from being able to operate, and meet their own needs. So the UN's SDGs are the most prominent sustainability framework, and the UN has entered into partnership with a lot of organizations, but the most prominent of them is called the Global Reporting Initiative, and they have created a conceptual model for sustainability reporting or sustainability accounting. Both of them, I would use them interchangeably in this presentation because they both mean the same thing. So, but what we have discovered is that this framework has not been widely adopted for a lot of reasons. So some people have advanced the cost as one of the major reasons why they are not using the framework. And some other people think it is not very domesticatable in their own situation. As in, yeah, it might work in the US, it might work in the EU, but for them in a small part of Africa, they feel it's going to be a lot of stress getting them to domesticate it. Now, for some other people, the reason is that the government doesn't require it, or the standard setters don't require it. So there is a lack of regulatory impetus. There are a lot of reasons that have been advanced. All right, and we'll look at some of this in the literature review. But I just had to do this as part of the background to the whole study. And what we've found out is that most firms still do their financial reporting with the frameworks that were designed in the 15th century. And at that time when these frameworks were designed, these accounting frameworks did not take into cognizance the issue of sustainability because it wasn't a problem at that point in time. So the statement of the problem, why this study became necessary, is that most firms are not adopting sustainability as their reporting framework of choice. Despite the fact that there is an abundance of evidence for stability, especially when it's done within a framework like the SDGs. So this study is just to find out why it is that firms are not adopting this accounting framework. And then, okay, let me just talk about that in the objectives. So the objectives of this study, therefore, based on the problem, is that we want to identify what are the pitfalls of the accounting framework currently, which most of these people are using. Like I said, some of them were designed far back as 15th century. We want to identify these pitfalls and then find out how these pitfalls affect the public companies that are using them presently. Then we want to analyze the implications of sustainability accounting on the practice of corporate performance. So we want to see, for some companies that have even implemented this, we want to see how it has affected them. And then we also want to see the challenges for the entities that have adopted it, the various methods of implementation, because there are a lot of methods through which organizations can implement this sustainability accounting. And then we want to find out what are the nuances that affected the implementation outcomes. Where there was probably, for example, was the locality a factor, in the sense that there are some things that might be easier to implement in a developed country versus a developing nation, and issues like that. So those are the kind of challenges we want to identify. And then we also want to now recommend a conceptual model of accounting practice that integrates sustainability and then helps enhance stakeholder value. So these are the 4 objectives of the study that I'm embarking on. And the research questions obviously are drawn from the 4 objectives. So the first research question we're trying to answer is this: are there any pitfalls of the traditional method of accounting that gives an impetus for the adoption of sustainability accounting? Is there any shortfall? Is there any reason at all why we are even campaigning for them to adopt sustainability as a method of accounting? The second research question is that, does sustainability accounting have any implication on the practice of performance reporting? So is there any result? Is there any change? Does it have any effect, or would it just be an exercise in superfluity when a company decides to use sustainability accounting instead of the traditional accounting framework? The third is, what are the challenges that have been encountered by organizations that have adopted sustainability accounting, and are there any solutions to these challenges? And then the last is, what is the best conceptual model of accounting practice that will integrate sustainability and enhance stakeholder value? So these are the research questions that I set out to answer using this study. And the significance of this study is that by the end of this study, I believe that we would be able to provide regulators with a scientifically researched basis for design and implementation of sustainability accounting framework. What we have discovered is that though the UN, through the GRI and a couple of other organizations, have come up with frameworks, because of that issue of how domesticable that framework is, many people shy away from it. So for some countries where the standard setters and the government or whoever regulates the industry has not come up with implementation practices, we want this study to be a guide for them, like a framework that they can read and find scientifically research basis when they are designing and implementing their sustainability accounting framework. Also, we want to provide organizations with a guide to sustainability accounting in its best form and that matches their situation. So we understand that the 2 most prominent issues that most organizations raise is their income level and their organizational size. So they say, yeah, you can tell a big company that because they have money to fund that level of research and fund that level of reporting. But for a small company who is just doing something on the side, who the government requires, according to the Companies Act, to send in an annual report, you can't force them, or you can't make them dig that deep into the system to get this information, because of their income level. There's this thing called the costs and the impact trade-off. So basically, we're trying to check, okay, what is the trade-off between the cost, what it will cost these guys to get these reports out and versus the impact it's going to make for them. So that has been one of the problems that many organizations deal with. So, but we believe that sustainability should not just be for the big companies, because according to our research, especially in Nigeria, SMEs, that's the small and medium enterprises, account for over 80% of the business the business environment. So if you say only the big companies should adopt sustainability, you're leaving out 80%. That's the largest chunk, of people out of the whole reporting process. And these guys too have they have footprints on the environment. So we need to come up with a reporting framework that will address their situation, so that there is no excuse or there is no more exemption that says, okay, so if you have a business within this level at this level of turnover, you are exempted from this kind of reporting. We don't want that to continue happening. So we want to ensure that at every point in time, that any organization, irrespective of the size of the income level or whatever kind of limitation they might have, usually should be able to use sustainability accounting. And then we want to be able to provide a model and a framework, so that when we want to when we want to help these organizations deploy their commercial products on ground that will help them. For example, most companies right now that report use one form of accounting software or the other. And many of these accounting software, practically like 95 to 98% of them, do not have any provisions for sustainability accounting frameworks inside of them. So we want to be able to provide a model and a framework that can now be, imbibed inside of these either existing accounting softwares or inside of new accounting softwares that are going to be deployed and sold on the market, so that when companies are going to do sustainability accounting, one of the issues that they have to deal with is already sorted out, which is the form and content of these financial statements. So that's the significance of this study. Now, because of the intensive nature of the study and the amount of finance required to execute an all-inclusive survey, we are limiting this study to public companies who are quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange and that are in the manufacturing and extractive industry in Nigeria. So that's what those are the delimitations of our study. And primarily, we're using a quantitative research design, and we are going to be issuing questionnaires or survey instruments to stakeholders of manufacturing entities. And the stakeholders are people who are affected in one way or the other by the operations of these entities. So we're talking about the government, we're talking about people that reside in their sphere of operations, we're talking about regulators, we're talking about professional bodies who have to engage with these people. We're talking about NGOs, that's non-governmental organizations, and other organizations who either are advocacy groups or whatever that have to interface with these organizations. Basically, everyone whose operations are affected by these entities. So those are the people we are going to survey and get feedback from in this research. For the literature review, which I'm working on currently, I'm just going to share the framework that I'm working with for the literature review. So based on my research objectives, which I have identified as to identify the pitfalls of accounting, analyze the implication of sustainability accounting, identify the challenges for entities, and then recommend the conceptual framework. These are the 4 cardinal points where my literature review is going to be directed to. So for the first research objective, which is to overview, investigate, and query the present practice, these are the things that I'm going to be looking at in my literature review. So I'm going to be taking a historical walk to check how accounting started, how the framework that is currently in use began, and the prevailing environment, the prevailing reporting environment that was existing at that time that made this sufficient. And then I'm also going to be looking at the various dimensions of accounting, managerial cost, and external performance reporting, which have grown out of the original framework in order to enhance reporting, management performance reporting. Then I'm also going to be looking at the weaknesses of the present system and why it became necessary that sustainability accounting should become a theme. And then the second part, which addresses the second aspect of my research objectives, would be now to overview the trends of sustainability accounting. So I'm going to begin with the global scenario, what obtains in the world and everywhere thus far. Then I am going to now I'm going to now continue by checking the regional context, what's the African experience, and then I'll narrow it down to the Nigerian context. Then I'm also going to be looking at what has been achieved so far by sustainability accounting. So I want to check whether there are any statements of changes, whether some organizations have published or pushed documents out like testimonials to show, okay, we have implemented sustainability accounting and this is its impact and stuff like that. So that's the second thing I'm going to be looking at. I'm also going to be reviewing between 30 to 50 scholarly articles on sustainability. And some of the things I'm going to be observing while I review these articles are, I'm going to be checking their methodologies, their findings and their recommendations. And then I'm going to be looking for gaps in their research. So one of the gaps I'm going to be looking out for is the geographical gaps, because I want to find out, so this research that was done, was there any particular, is there a geographical gap due to the fact that it was done in this locality and it would be difficult to implement the findings of this research in another locality, So I want to investigate that in those research articles. Okay, 2 minutes. Then I also want to look at time gaps due to the passage of time since the study was conducted. I also want to look at philosophical gaps owing to the philosophical paradigms that this research has used. So I'm also going to be looking at theoretical framework for sustainability accounting. I'll be reviewing up to 10 theories existing in sustainability accounting currently, and then I would find areas of convergence and how it fits into my study. And then I will, based on all that I'm looking at, I will now start working on the conceptual framework for sustainability accounting, which would suit some of the problems we have identified presently. So since my time is up, I will just rush through the third part of the problem and the fourth part of the problem, which my literature review is going to address. So the third part is just going to look at what was the motivation for companies that transited. Was it the management's desire to comply with the SDGs? Was it as a result of other standard setters? Was it regulatory requirements? And then what was their translation plan? How long did it take them? Did size affect them? Was there a cost problem and all of that? All the encumbrances. And what are the teething problems that they faced and how they were overcome? And was there any reported improvements based on their scenario? So the last part is where I now begin to create the conceptual framework. And this is where the issue of adding new knowledge to the body of knowledge that exists currently begins. Because this is where I now bring all the feedback that I get from my research respondents and a couple of other questions that I've, a couple of other feedback that I've gotten from my literature review, and now begin to work them into a conceptual framework that henceforth will be used by other people who are intending to research on this subject. So some of the things that would come out would be like a database schema, reports prototypes. Then I also look at the possibility of adding artificial intelligence in the production of these reports, and a couple of other things that the literature review and the survey would throw up eventually. So these are the things that I'm working with, and I am done with the presentation. Thank you very much, sir.
So Nathan, very insightful, very interesting presentation. And I hope other students have learned something from the way Nathan has presented to us today. And I'm very happy to have a student like Nathan, the way he has presented, the way he has organized his work. You can see he's working with his supervisor. And let's see what are the observations from other students who are around on the work Nathan is doing. Help him, or comments that you think could help his study. Comments help, contributions. You know, I have a nephew of mine who is studying in China. He's also doing a PhD like most of you, and he's taking his classes online. And even whatever work they are doing, they do it online. Now, in China, they do not allow one to participate in an online activity without you switching on your camera. You have to show that you are there.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not saying all of you switch on your cameras, but yeah. So please, students, before members of staff make comments, Messi Eziala, Miss Thompson Dambita.
Good morning, Doc.
Yes. What did you learn?
Good morning, Dr. Box. Sir.
Good morning. I can hear you.
It's just okay. It's just to commend Onyeka for what he did. He clearly presented and delineated what he has done. And as you said, I saw that relationship with his supervisor. So I must commend his work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Percy.
Musonda, Mr. Mbita.
Prof, I'm here.
Yes, you saw your friends. Tell us how you can. He wants help.
I know we've learned something from him. He's coming up well. Don't have much to say, Professor.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Ndalama, Dr. Kachamba, your student here.
Not yet, Doc. Let me just oh, my student is in. What a coincidence. How are you?
I'm very well, Prof.
Good. You are already presented?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Joining in late. Okay, just do me a favor by just running through, especially yourself into the problem.
Okay, so let me just go back to the just presents okay, so can you see my screen?
It's coming on. Yes, it's on now.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to try to run through the whole thing in 5 minutes, but you're private to the whole thing that I've done. So I'm just going to go straight to the statement of problem. And the problem is, yes, the problem that prompts the study is that most firms are not adopting sustainability accounting as their reporting framework for performance reporting. So because of that, we decide to do this study to find out why they are not adopting it and what can be done for them to, begin to adopt this framework. So that's the problem that this research is going to address.
Where are the objectives?
Okay, so these are the objectives. To identify the pitfalls of the accounting framework that is in use currently, which most of them were designed in the 15th century. And then the second is to analyze the implications of sustainability accounting on the practice of corporate performance reporting. The third is to identify the challenges for entities that have adopted the sustainability accounting method, and then how they implemented it, the various methods of implementation, and things that affected their implementation outcomes so that other organizations can learn from their experiences. And then the last is to recommend a conceptual framework that can serve other organizations who are yet to adopt so that they can know how best to adopt, especially with respect to either their income level or their size or whatever peculiar situation that they're in at that particular point in time. So those are the objectives.
Okay. So far, have you done your literature review?
For now, I have not done a lot. So I have just gathered all the articles that I'm going to be reviewing, and I want to start reviewing them one by one now to know how suitable they are to the research. And then if they are not, then I probably have to still get some more other articles to review. But I've been able to lay my hands on about 50 of them, and I'm now going to start taking them one by one to X-ray all the points that we have been discussing so far.
Okay. That is the way so far.
Yes,
That's interesting. For a literature review, kindly make
these
use of
these are the guides. Yes, these are the
Yes.
guides. These are the based on what we discussed the last time we spoke.
Yes.
I'm going to base my literature review on the research objectives,
Good.
which I identified at these 4. And then I am also now going to now target, because I had to take these 4 areas and break them down into the 4 targets that my literature review is going to cover. So this part 1 is going to target the first research objective, which looks at the history of accounting, the current framework, and the weaknesses of the present system that necessitated the use of sustainability accounting. And then the second part is going to look at the overview of the trends in sustainability accounting. We're going to be looking at the global scenario and then narrow it down to the African experience, then down to the Nigerian context. Then want to check what has been achieved so far by sustainability accounting. Have companies that have implemented it identified any changes, any testimonials about the impact it has had on their performance? And then I would now review the studies that I talked about, and I'm trying to observe things like their methodologies, their findings and recommendations. I want to check the gaps that they have in their research, the geographical gaps due to the locality where it was conducted. I'm going to be looking at the time gaps due to the passage of time that those research, in case the findings and their other things that they recommended have been overtaken by events. And then I want to look at philosophical gaps that would be due to the paradigms that were used by these researchers, especially their conceptual frameworks and their research methodologies and design, right? So the second part, which will address the second objective in the research, would be to now look at the theoretical framework. I'm going to look at all the theories, about 10 of them, that are supporting the principle of sustainability accounting.
All right,
Some of them have been,
enough. That's enough. That's enough. So far, the work seems to be progressing.
Yes, sir.
Seems to be progressing very well, except you are taking too long. What's happening?
Hello.
Yes.
Let me come in.
Yes.
I think we have taken 5 minutes of another candidate's time. Maybe
Okay.
you can continue the conversation later outside the forum now.
All right.
The lecturer.
Go.
But Nathan, I'm extremely grateful. I'm happy that we have a presentation like this coming and other students can see how to present the work that they are doing up to the stage they have reached. Thanks, Nathan, for this presentation, and we want to see how you have moved to the next stage in the next colloquium we have. Best wishes in your studies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next presenter is the Kapumba. Brian Kapumba, are you ready?
Yes, Prof, I'm around.
Yes, make your presentation. He's a PhD student in I think teaching, in service training, something like that, for early learners. So please, Mr. Kapumba, make your presentation.
Yes, please. I'm gracious. I sent the slides to you. Please do it for me so that I present. I follow when talking.
Gracious, we want Kapumba's slides.
Okay, Prof.
Thank you, gracious. I'm looking at the in-service professional development programs and their impact on early childhood primary school teacher learners in Chitambo district of Zambia. Next. Next slide, gracious. Thank you. The background of the study, I think we all know that in 2013, the government came up with the new curriculum. Under this curriculum, they included the preschool education. Now, as they come up with this, it came to the attention that there were lack of preschool teachers in schools, and then these preschool children or learners were given the primary school trained teachers to teach them. Maybe you can make them a bit larger for me, gracious. Make them a bit larger for me. The slides, make them a bit the words.
Gracious, is it possible to put them in slide mode?
Make them
in
a bit
slide
larger.
show.
Okay. Okay. Start from the beginning.
Now, in order for these teachers to work well, the government introduced some in-service. Hello again. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, in order for these in-service programs to be successful, they should target
the screen on this one.
You need to.
Okay.
Yeah. This kind of thing below there.
Just on that one. We're saying in order for these. Okay, so it's okay. It's okay, Gracious. It's okay. In order for these in-service programs to be successful, they should target whole teacher development, which includes social, emotional, and attitude change. So therefore, teachers' social, emotion, and attitude knowledge is important if they are to change in the way they perceive early child education. So what we are saying here is that these professional development programs should embed social, emotional, and attitude knowledge so that teachers who are teaching these children will be able to impart these skills or competences into the early childhood learners. Next slide. The statement of the research problem. I'm looking at the in-service professional development programs and their impact on early childhood primary school teacher learners, and extent they have changed socially, emotionally, intellectually, and also their attitude towards the early childhood education. How have these teachers changed after going through these programs? Have they changed emotionally, socially, intellectually, and of course, attitudes towards the learners that they are handling? Because when you look at the two programs, ECE and the primary, these teachers go through different types of training. So they must align now themselves to ECE. Next slide. Next slide. The aim or the aim and goal of this study, the aim is to investigate the contribution that in-service professional development programs have made in changing primary school teacher learners' attitude, emotions, and social aspects towards teaching early childhood education. Then the goal is to see the inclusion of social knowledge, emotional knowledge, and attitude topics in the already existing curriculum and professional development programs to prepare the teachers to handle the learners' attitudes, emotions, and social behavior. Next. Significance of the study. This study will help the policymakers and other stakeholders not only to dwell on intellectual knowledge of teachers and learners, but also develop the social knowledge, emotional knowledge, and attitudes of teachers in lesson delivery. Then the other point is that it will help the Ministry of Education officials to see if professional development programs they have provided to early childhood primary school teachers have changed their social, emotional, and attitudes towards the early childhood education. Next. The research questions. The first research question is, how has the in-service professional development programs helped primary school teachers in understanding the teaching and learning environment at early childhood level? The second question, research question is, to what extent have the in-service professional development programs being provided currently covered the social, emotional, and the attitude as the topics? 3, how can the inclusion of social knowledge, emotional knowledge, and attitude topics in the teacher's curriculum improve the teaching and learning environment? Then the fourth and last one is, what challenges are faced by primary school teachers teaching early childhood learners in the application of social knowledge, emotional knowledge, and attitudes in practice? Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. Here we are looking at the objectives of the study. 1, to find out how in-service profession development programs have helped primary school teachers in understanding the teaching and learning at early childhood level. Then establish the extent to which in-service profession programs being provided currently have covered the social, emotional, and attitude as topics. Then 3, find out how the inclusion of social knowledge, emotional knowledge, and attitude topics in the teacher's curriculum can improve the teaching and learning environment. Then 4, find out challenges faced by primary school teachers teaching early childhood learners in the application of social knowledge, emotional knowledge, and attitudes in practice. Next. A bit, the other slide up there. The other one, you have jumped one. Go up. Okay, literature review. Of course, this is the proposal. This is what I covered in my literature review of my proposal. 1, the concept of early childhood education, which this education sector has become a policy in many countries and described as an important phase in child development. Then the other part that will be covered or was covered is the concept of in-service professional development. We are looking at all forms of training in a workplace. Now here we also look at the in-service profession development programs that are taking place in a workplace after a teacher has left the pre-service college or university. It's according to Semani. Then we also looked at briefly at the historical perspective of professional development. This professional development started some time back. Of course, we can refer to the time of Industrial Revolution when there were a lot of bodies that emerged. Occupational bodies that emerged. Then we also looked at the theories of professional development. Here, I looked at 2 theories, that is social cognitive learning and also community of practice. Then I looked also at the importance of teachers understanding social, emotional, and attitude education. Of course, when teachers understand this, they'll be able to understand that a classroom, when a child comes in a classroom, will be able to face different types of people who are coming from different types of ground, of course, with different type of beliefs and capabilities. Then I also looked at the professional development and the social, emotional, and the attitude education from a wide point of view. where we are found in Europe, where there's some recommendations that were made that during these professional developments or in the curriculum, social, emotional, and the education, attitude education must be included. Also looked at the literature review continues. We also looked at Asia and the Far East. These also, according to Colloquium 2017, they have embedded their some countries have embedded attitudes, emotional knowledge, and social knowledge into their curriculum. I also try to look briefly on Africa, where Africa, the study that was done by Marseille and the colleagues in 2021, showing that Africa has not yet done this, has not embedded the social, emotional, and the attitude education in the curriculum. Most of the African countries have not done this. And then I zeroed to Zambia, where we are today, from the literature reviewed. Denda also talked about that we need also to add this type of education into our curriculum. I think this is how far I went in terms of my preparations. I've not yet done a methodology. I'm working on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Kapumba, Brian, and thanks for keeping to time. And you started late, but you were able to squeeze whatever you had within the time given. So now we need observations from fellow students first. Observations, questions, help. When people are quiet, it means they are happy with what has been presented, or they have a lot of questions and you don't want, you say here you're not embarrassing anyone, or you want to help your friend, okay? You want to help your friend. Yes, I think there's a hand, who is the hand? Cleopas Mono. Mono.
Yes, Doc, good morning.
Good morning, welcome.
And good morning to the presenter, Mr. Kapumba.
Thank you so much. How are you, Mr. Mono?
Very much fine, sir. I think for me, my observation is you need to practice a lot in terms of presenting. I think from the voice, the way it was coming out, it showed as if we are panicking, I think, from my observation. So maybe you can practice a lot on how to do the presentation so that you can calmly do it. I think that's my advice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The slides, the font, I don't know where, it was just too small, so I couldn't see properly. No wonder I asked Gracious to make it a bit larger. Sure. Thank you so much for that.
I don't see any other hand. Or you want me to maybe Dr. Kachamba, any observations? Dr. Ndalama? I'm asking my colleagues who are, because I know they are around, I can see them.
Maybe let Dr. Ndalama begin. Is Dr. Ndalama there?
Okay, Dr. Kachamba, go ahead. Dr. Kachamba.
Okay. For me, the observation is based on a study. There are quite a number of issues that may that will call for measuring and the like. Now, since the methodology is yet to come out, we need to determine how such concepts like attitudes and the like are going to be measured for us to determine how these teachers will have moved from their previous position to the current, or if at all there is any move or change. So I think there must be a proper approach to that, because the issues raised are quite tricky to measure, and probably to find the subject matter to base our discussions on. This is dealing with the CPD, continuing professional development, I guess. Yeah, then the literature reviews looks quite substantial, but I feel there is need for it to be aligned appropriately with objectives. The literature review doesn't, maybe it has, I've not just seen it, but in my view, it has not really brought out a clear overview of the issues at study. So maybe aligning it properly with the objective would help. Otherwise, the study is quite good. It is timely. It will help especially teachers. I wish it could also add a dimension that brings out the type of generation we're dealing with, so that the competencies and the skills that teachers should possess are equally aligned with the current demands of the system. Otherwise, it's, for me, sounds more of a qualitative study, but begging the need for quantifying certain concepts if we are to make informed conclusions. That is basing on the literature review and the objectives as they stand. The topic, I think, can also be refined. It can also refine. Maybe just a quick glance at the statement of the problem before I rest my case. Just lead me to the statement of the problem. Gracious, can you kindly lead me to the statement of the problem? Okay.
Take us to the statement of the problem.
Okay. That looks like a topic. I'm yet to see where the problem lies. Service professional development programs and their impact on early childhood primary teachers. They have changed socially. Well, this is, what level is this? This PhD?
Yes.
Oh, I think that something can be done.
Again, I think this is the second time we are seeing a slide written like this. A person is thinking something else, and what is being presented to us is something different.
Yeah.
You know, look at the example Nathan did, our previous presenter. Okay, what you are telling us as the statement of the problem, a person also should read what you are presenting as a statement of the problem. Okay, well, I wanted to comment on that, but Dr. Kachamba has brought it earlier. So Dr. Kachamba, continue, sorry.
It's fine, bro. So I think this is the backbone of research.
Yeah.
We will define the problem, we will justify even the need to conduct research. Otherwise, if it's not properly defined, then we have a problem. So kindly define from the background that you've given. Maybe the background also could be speaking something else, because the background is well laid. The problem must begin resurfacing from a well laid background. Now, why has it proven difficult for us to see a problem from that context? I think something can be done. Something can be done before we proceed. And then on your literature review again, you need to highlight gaps. We have not yet seen exactly what gaps are coming out from your literature review, despite its so extensive coverage. So we need to see the gaps that you are bringing out. That could also add flesh to your statement of the problem. So, Prof, I think that's what I can say to this study.
Yeah, we are about to go on a break. Okay, let me have a few observations. Gracious, take us to the significance. Sorry not to allow you, Brian, to make responses to what Dr. Kachamba has said, but maybe first make a response to observations Dr. Kachamba is making. We must give you a chance. The observations Dr. Kachamba has made.
Thank you, Prof. I've taken note what Dr. Kachamba said. I'll work on it. I'll try to fuse in on the statement of the problem. Of course, this is what just what I picked. Of course, there's other information that I was supposed to write, maybe because it's a slide. I'll do it.
Okay.
Sure.
I think let's proceed again. Gracious, show us the slide where there's the significance of the research. Yeah, there is. Yeah, the second statement you make. Really, what is the difference with the first one? And it's really like another study which you are trying to recommend and so on. It will help the Ministry of Education official to see if professional development. You see, why asking? You know, you must be categorical on what you want to do. It will develop this, it will develop that, it will help in developing, bringing better students and so on, rather than being another study which you are recommending to the Ministry of Education. Okay, why should they take your study seriously if you are asking them to go and test what you have done? You see, remember, this is a PhD. You want to convince others that what you are doing is right. And if they take it, there'll be a change. Not for them to start testing. Okay. Okay. The other thing, let's quickly go back to the objectives.
I would be very uncomfortable.
Let's get back to the objectives.
Rolling it back at this stage, and then we don't know what will happen.
Hey, Kenneth Dimulenga.
So if it's just the customers that are impacted, I think when you look at the numbers, you'll be able to profile them.
Kenneth Dimulenga.
And up at the same time or something.
Objectives.
And then we now check our data and see.
I think the objectives are somewhere below that. They are no, below. They are not putting some order. Kenneth Dimulenga.
If you are finding, if you have a challenge,
Hello. You know, we are getting a feedback from Kenneth Dimulenga, and it is very strong. Okay. Thank you, Kennedy. Now, I think this is an advice for all our candidates who are here and your studies. more especially the PhD candidates. One of the questions, that question usually sounds foolish, which you'll be asked is, what is the contribution of your study to the body of knowledge? Basically, that is the difference between a PhD and a master's degree. And you are getting a PhD study. Okay, this is not just to Brian, but to all our candidates. You must answer this question. What is your contribution to the body of knowledge? Look at your objectives, Brian. And if I am reading it, I ask you the question, what is your contribution to the body of knowledge? Merely by telling me that I want to find out whether there's this problem, establish the extent of this problem, find out the inclusion of this, find out the challenges of that. Tell me, if you have found out all that, so what? If you want us to give you a degree, a PhD degree, tell us what is significant to the body of knowledge that you have contributed to your study. Show us with your objectives. Not this. Sorry to say this in a crude way, but if you do not improve on these objectives, you won't get a PhD, you won't. What is your contribution to knowledge? That's what differentiates a master's and a PhD. Telling us there's this, I want to find out this problem, I want to find out that problem, I want to find out this, I want to find out what challenges they're facing. It won't give you a PhD, it won't. Okay. Okay. I thought I should give this strongly. I must be honest, I'm saying it in a crude way, but that's what differentiates a PhD and any other degree. Your contribution to the body of knowledge. Merely by identifying the problems, you are not solving the problems. Solve these problems. So what is it that you are going to do to solve the problems that you are finding? This is what your research should do. Have you seen your friend, the last presentation by your friend? He wants to develop a model that sorts out the problem of sustainable accounting. Now, tell us, you must develop a problem, a solution to the problems of early childhood learning in this. So include that as part of your objectives. Then you will complete this. But your study is hard. It looks simple like this. It's hard. The 3 years you are telling me. We'll see. Okay. Your comments, Brian.
Thank you so much, Prof. I've taken note. I'll work on what you have advised. We are learning. We are students. We are learning. We need to forge ahead. When you help us like this, I think it's a great thing. We have just to adhere and then do what is right. As you have put it, at the end of the day, when we graduate, people will be coming to ask from us, and we need to give them the correct information.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Any other persons? Sorry, some things I sound crude and so on. But most of you are PhD students. Eh? The questions that will be this, you know, that I've over 38 years of experience teaching in the university. And you know, if you want to fail students, ask them a very simple question. The questions that you are asked at PhD level are not difficult questions, but they're the most dangerous questions you get in life. So when you are preparing your studies, even when you are getting advice, open your minds, open your ears, open your eyes. I've seen some of you writing, you're just going everywhere, writing chapter 4, chapter 7, chapter 10, and so on. You don't even want any input from your supervisor. And when you start reading it, you start crying. Sorry to tell you these things, but we want to help you. Every time you write something, ask yourself questions. You know, questions bring answers. When you make statements, you stop thinking. There's a hand. Charity.
I'm unable to hear you. You are too low.
Oh, is that true that everybody thinks I'm too low?
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's that. I've made maybe very strong comments and yeah. I thought you were going to make a comment on your friend's presentation. Okay, we'll have a break and we will meet at 11 hours and who is presenting at 11 hours? Aden Herigo? Yes, at 11 hours. So let's make a break. We'll meet at 11 hours. Best wishes. Oh, Charity, you want to make it, or you have put your hand down? Charity. There's a hand from Charity. Charity. Okay. Let's meet at 11 hours.
Sorry, doctor. My hand is up. Maybe it didn't
Oh.
Okay, it's Musa from South Africa.
Yes, come in, Dube.
Yes, good morning, doctor.
I only hope you're not in a place where there are floods in Durban.
No,
oh, you're from Pretoria.
No, I'm not Pretoria. I'm in Johannesburg.
Oh, okay. Sorry for the
yeah. Okay. I have a question, Doc. I just want to find out what.
Yes.
In fact, I want to confirm if my presentation is at 1500 hours because I have a commitment between now and about 1 p.m. So I won't be able to come back at 11.
No problem. Come at 15 hours. There's no problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you are welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Charity, you have a hand up. Charity, we are not ignoring you. Okay, let's go for the break and we'll be back at 11.